Hello! I have to. Hello! I have to apologize. I gave the speech for over 2 hours about immigration and why I support it, but I forgot to mention one of the most important points of the whole speech. When I decided to give that speech, this is one of the main points I wanted to make. I was rather remiss to have forgotten to make it. I'll try to keep this video much shorter than the previous one. So in the previous video, I talked about how we have business licenses and immigration licenses. A visa is a license, a permission slip, giving you permission to enter the United States. And I said how business licenses restrict the number of businesses operating. The visa system exists to restrict the number of people entering the United States. But there's an important difference. At least with business licenses, there isn't a cap on the number of business licenses issued each year. There isn't a cap saying we can't have more than 100 people opening new farms in the USA each year. By contrast, with our present immigration system, ever since 1965, we still have a cap on the number of people allowed into the USA from, say, Mexico each year. It's not a specified number, but as I mentioned before, no more of all the visa applications that can be approved each year, no more than 7% can be from one country. That is, out of all visa applications approved each year, no more than 7% can be from Mexicans. And yet, each year, of all the visa applications received, 30% of them are from Mexicans. So we have this tremendous capping system. And then basically, lots of people who say they're libertarians or objectivists, they like to say, well, if we had a complete free market, if we had a liberal Republican like Washington state, yeah, I would be for open immigration. But we have a welfare state, and therefore we can't have open immigration because every additional immigrant adds to our welfare burden. So here's my response to that. Okay, even though we have business licenses, at least we don't have a cap on the number of businesses. But a lot of our fellow libertarians and objectivists do complain about taxpayer subsidies to businesses. They talk about farm subsidies. They talk about bank bailouts. Billions of dollars in U.S. tax money go to banks. They go to farms, they go to museums like the Smithsonian. So many businesses, so many even not-for-profit organizations, so many institutions. These systems are licensed, these types of firms, organizations are licensed, but at least we don't have a cap limiting their number. So here's my problem with people who call themselves libertarians or objectivists saying, yeah, because we have a welfare state and because every additional immigrant, especially an unlicensed one, adds to our welfare burden, we should keep our present system or limit immigration. When people say that, I think it's pretty silly because if they want to take that, they want to apply that same logic, if they want to be logically consistent, they should also say, well, every additional bank or farm could also add to our welfare burden. So as long as we have a welfare state, there should be a cap on the number of banks, cap on the number of banks or farms that can open each year to prevent an exacerbation of our welfare state. If that principle applies to immigrants, why shouldn't it apply to the number of banks or numbers of farms operating each year? And I think a lot of libertarians or objectivists would reply to such a suggestion by saying, no, of course we resent corporate welfare. Of course we resent taxpayer funding going to farms and banks. But just because we resent that doesn't mean that would justify a cap on the number of banks or farms operating each year. It does not mean that would justify a cap on the number of licenses issued each year to banks or farms. That merely expands the regulatory entitlement state further. It worsens the problem. Well, doesn't that same objection apply to immigration? Wouldn't the logical position be, yes, when we do resent taxpayer money going to fund for the living standards of immigrants. But just because of that, that doesn't justify the present cap on the number of visas issued each year, doesn't justify the cap limiting the number of people who are allowed to come from Mexico each year, because that cap is merely an extension, expansion, a worsening, an exacerbation of our regulatory entitlement state. If protecting us from welfare spending and protecting us from corporate welfare and taxpayer spending isn't good enough reason to just, for the sake of farmers and banks, if that's not good enough, if stopping corporate welfare to farmers and banks is not justification enough for a cap limiting the number of banks and farms allowed to operate open each year, I think it follows that the supposed cause of stopping additional taxpayer funds to going to immigrants is really not justification enough for the present cap on the number of people allowed to come to the USA from Mexico each year. Thank you very much.